From News Channel 4, this is Reporter's Beat.
Welcome to our special presentation on the Hudson River. I'm Lynda Baquero. We're here at Manhattan's Hudson River Park, and for the next half hour, we will explore the Hudson's rich history in art, literature, and war. We'll explain why the Hudson made New York City a world capital. And we'll look at some of the environmental battles playing out along the Hudson shores and take a look at changing attitudes as the Hudson transforms itself from a once dangerously polluted river into a recreational destination. So join us as we tour the mighty Hudson.
The Mighty Hudson with Lynda Baquero.
Before Henry Hudson's historic journey past here in 1609, the Native American names for the river meant the river that flows both ways. Well, today that takes on new meaning as the Hudson is very much at a turning point. There is optimism and concern about the Hudson's future, and only time will tell which direction the Hudson will flow.
Without the Hudson River, New York would be a minor part of this country and this world.
Nearly 400 years ago, Henry Hudson sailed right past here into New York Harbor on his ship called the Half Moon. He was searching for a route from the North Atlantic to China. Well, he didn't exactly find what he was looking for.
But he discovered one of the great rivers of the New World, and one whose natural beauty and importance to this country can't be overstated. He played a central part in the development of the whole New World.
This was the first major transportation corridor in the early history of our country, and it's the ultimate reason that made New York City so significant.
The Hudson River begins deep in the Adirondacks, high above Mount Marcy near Lake Tier of the Clouds. From there, she flows to New York Harbor before emptying out into the Atlantic Ocean. Soon after its discovery, the Hudson became the main thoroughfare in a burgeoning land.
They didn't have these superhighways that we have. There were only a very few roads, and they were very poor roads at that.
It was, Route 80, it was the thruway, it was the turnpike. And that's how people got from one place to the other.
A century later, the Hudson became crucial for much more than just commerce. The Hudson was the strategic center of the Revolutionary War.
Most folks do not understand how critical the Hudson River Valley was to the American Revolutionary era.
People like George Washington, as well as the British generals, realized that the Hudson Valley was key. And whoever controlled the Hudson River and the Hudson Valley could really control the colonies, because it really split New England off from the middle colonies and the South.
If the British had control of the Hudson River, they then could have stopped the flow of reinforcements from New England and the supplying of those armies from the South.
At West Point, you'll find links from the Great Chain that was spread across the Hudson in 1778 near the Bear Mountain Bridge to block British ships. Each link is 2 feet long, attached to logs that floated on the river. The British never reached that part of the Hudson, known as the Hudson Highlands, about 50 miles north of New York City. Jeffrey Levinton of Stony Brook University showed me the area near Foundry Cove.
Later on in the Civil War, this was a crucial place, and Lincoln came twice because it was one of the few places, if not the only place, that large amounts of ordnance could be manufactured.
In the mid-1800s, you could say that the tide turned, and the Hudson became a place where tourists on steamboats would journey up from the city to catch a glimpse of the homes of the rich and famous. One of those manors was Sunnyside. Here in Tarrytown, this is the historic home of one of America's first celebrities, author Washington Irving. Irving used the scenery of the Hudson Valley as the basis for his classic tale, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. About his central character, Ichabod Crane, he wrote, "He journeyed along the sides of a range of hills which look out upon some of the goodliest scenes of the mighty Hudson." Irving's contemporaries in the world of art were also inspired by the Hudson. People like Thomas Cole developed what became known as the Hudson River School of Painting. Many historic sites along the Hudson with their original furnishings are open to the public, including Kykuit, the hilltop home to the Rockefeller family. Historic estates line the Hudson's shores from Montgomery Place in Annandale to Hyde Park, the home of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Most of these homes were established along the Hudson in the mid-1800s.
It was essential in creating an American identity during the first half of the 19th century. And this is a time when Americans really were very anxious to know who they were going to be and what this place was going to be. Was it going to be a new Eden? They like to think so, and they saw the Hudson River as the perfect backdrop for this new experiment.
And with gasoline prices on the rise this summer, tourism officials in the historic Hudson Valley are bracing for an increase in visitors looking for a place to go. Some of these destinations are just a short drive or train ride away. You can check out our website, WNBC.com, for more information on things to do and places to go along the Hudson. Coming up, we will sit down with New York Governor George Pataki to hear what worries him about the Hudson's future. Stay with us for lots more on the Mighty Hudson.
You're watching Reporter's Beat, the Mighty Hudson, with Lynda Baquero.
Welcome back. You can't talk about the Hudson for very long before getting into the controversial topic of pollution, specifically PCBs. NBC's parent company, General Electric, is planning to carry out the largest environmental dredging project in U.S. history, while another big environmental story plays out at the Indian Point Power Plant. It's all part of the legacy of the working river. As J.D. Dapper discovered, the Hudson has always been a place to earn a living.
I'm John Mylod, and we're looking for shad. Shad are coming up the river to spawn. They're an ocean fish that live primarily in the ocean, but spawn in freshwater rivers like the Hudson. Current is a little stronger out here, so it's going to pull this around a little bit.
John Mylod is a fragile link to a long-lost past, a time when hundreds of men like him rowed out onto the Hudson in the spring to set their nets and haul in hearty catches of shad.
In the 1950s, there were probably 15 to 20 different boats out here fishing for shad. We should have a fish in every mesh. Now we are just a few of less than probably a dozen people on the entire river fishing for shad.
And Mylod and his partner aren't doing much catching either.
It's about a 5-pound fish, about 22 inches long. That's a beautiful fish.
One of only a handful they'll take ashore today. So why do they bother?
There'll be a time when the river is clean again. There'll be a time when the shad will return in numbers, and there'll be a time that people need and want the bounty out of the estuary like the Hudson.
How long do you want to be fishing this river?
We'll fish until it doesn't make any sense anymore.
It wasn't that long ago, fewer than 50 years, that the Hudson was still a major commercial fishery, as it had been since the days of the earliest settlers. But two things conspired to kill off this once thriving industry: overfishing and pollution.
Pollution is the legacy of another way in which this was once a working river, the Hudson as an efficient natural sewer. For the better part of a century, cities and towns and industries relied on the river to carry away their waste.
By outward appearances, this looks like an extremely healthy, and one might even be tempted to use the word pristine system.
Professor Richard Bopp has studied pollution in the Hudson for decades, and he knows it is anything but pristine. Heavy metals line the bottom of the river, but PCBs are what get the attention because they accumulate in the fish that people want to eat.
We're sitting across the river from the General Electric Hudson Falls plant.
General Electric, which is the parent company of WNBC, used PCBs in making electrical equipment from the late 40s until the government banned the chemical in the early 70s. Dumping the oily substance on the ground and into the river was not only customary, it was legal.
We used them legally at all times while the plants were in operation and were using PCBs. And it really wasn't until the sort of early 70s that you were required to have permits to discharge substances out of your industrial processes. And when permits were required, GE had permits.
But the presence of PCBs had a devastating effect on what remained of the fishing industry.
That discovery led to the closure of the lower Hudson commercial striped bass fishery. It also led to a restriction on fishing in the upper Hudson River, recreational fishing in the upper Hudson River.
Now those PCBs make parts of the upper Hudson a Superfund site, and the government is requiring GE to clean it up. After years of hearings and proposals and acrimony, a dredging plan has finally been approved for a 40-mile stretch of the river.
This is, I think, probably the most complex, from a logistical point of view, Superfund cleanup that's ever been done. We have to build a dewatering facility, we have to build a wastewater treatment plant, and essentially we have to build a small rail yard to be able to handle the material that's dredged.
And so probably starting in 2008, GE will now dredge 2 spots along this river, including here south of Fort Edward, in a place where looks can be deceiving. It is idyllic, yet it is one of the most polluted spots with PCBs along the entire Hudson River.
Whether dredging will change that, though, is not guaranteed. The legacy of the working river may not be so easy to erase. And the Hudson still faces new environmental problems. Downriver in Westchester County, the Indian Point nuclear plant is a potential case in point. Strontium-90 and tritium have both leaked from the plant and are probably entering the river. Environmentalists have sued, but federal, state, and local officials agree with Indian Point's owner, Entergy, that the amounts are far too tiny to be harmful.
We're very comfortable with the fact that there is no risk to the public's health, either in the surrounding communities or in the Hudson River.
Which brings us finally to Kingston. Like every other city along the Hudson, it owes its very existence to the working river. At one time or another, the river that was responsible for virtually every job here. But that era has long since passed, and now Kingston is trying to reconnect to a different Hudson, the recreational river.
And so this spring, an organization called Scenic Hudson has sponsored a riverfront cleanup, not only here, but in 200 locations from New York Harbor to the Adirondacks.
As time goes on, as years go on, as long as we continue this, it'll get better.
On a rainy Saturday in Beacon, volunteers clear a long stretch of shoreline. And on a sunny Saturday in Kingston, volunteers do the same with the help of an old trolley on a historic line.
People are saying this is our river. We're going to make sure it's a world-class resource that it has been in the past in an industrial sense, but now it can be part of people's everyday lives in a very positive sense.
Up next, fishing, boating, even swimming in the Hudson. Attitudes about the river are changing.
You're watching Reporters Beat, the Mighty Hudson, with Lynda Baquero.
Welcome back. You know, the Hudson is an estuary. That's a river that flows 2 ways and is subject to tides. That may help explain the current state of the Hudson.
That's one of the reasons the Hudson has survived for hundreds of years, all the assaults on it, that the ocean is out there coming in really to refresh and renew it every day.
Today's Hudson River is cleaner than it's been in a generation, but old ideas about the river are slow to change.
I think that there is still a common misconception that the river is dirty and that you shouldn't swim in it or you shouldn't put your feet in it.
David Fisher monitors the Hudson for the Institute for Ecosystem Studies.
Even though it looks dirty or muddy, it's not something that you shouldn't swim in because it's sediment loaded in the river. So that those people who know the river a little bit better aren't so afraid of it.
People aren't so afraid of the recreational river. Today, the Hudson is crowded with kayakers and jet skiers.
I'd love to see people out there this summer.
New York's governor is wrapping up his 3rd and final term. The Hudson in Peekskill is a return to where it all began for George Pataki.
Right now we're at a park in my hometown of Peekskill. This was the town dump, and this was the wrong side of the tracks, and we didn't have any public access. You couldn't get to the river. You could see it in the distance, but you couldn't reach out and touch it. And if you could get to the river, you were told not to touch it because it was so polluted. And now communities such as my hometown are reclaiming what had been dumps.
The governor predicts by 2009, the entire river will be swimmable.
Right now, large stretches are swimmable. You can swim right here. You can swim in many, many areas, but there are pools where you wouldn't want to do that yet.
Challenges still that remain on the Hudson are the large amounts of PCBs above Albany. That cleanup is extremely important to complete the feeling that the Hudson is once again a clean place.
100 years ago, we lost our waterfronts. They were considered the places you put the sewer plants, the dumps, where the factories discharged their waste right into the water body.
5 miles of walkways and bike paths, even plans for a beach are slated for the Hudson River Park. When the Hudson River Park is completed, it will span from the Battery to 59th Street.
Fish on! Yay!
At Manhattan's southern tip, a new generation is learning all about the Hudson and how to handle a rod and reel.
was kind of hard at first. Then I felt the tug and I just reeled it up quickly.
So that fish is 6 feet, 4 inches long.
Dan Erickson is a scientist with the Wildlife Conservation Society. In the waters off Hyde Park, his team is placing these tags on giant Atlantic sturgeon.
These tags will collect data every minute, and with that information, we'll be able to identify movement patterns and behavior of the fish.
These are among the world's oldest species of fish. The sturgeon became depleted and endangered. Since 1998, there's a ban on fishing for sturgeon in the United States. Now they're hoping to rebuild their population.
The problem with the Atlantic sturgeon was heavy harvest of adults. The adults are most valuable, the female adults are most valuable because of caviar. Each fish is worth maybe $1,000 to $3,000.
And there's new optimism for the short-nosed sturgeon, a relative of this fish. These scientists are confident there are 60,000 of them in the Hudson. That's more than enough to constitute a secure population. About 60 miles north of New York City,
our plan is to get the young people of this town swimming, not just sailing.
Folk legend Pete Seeger is continuing his lifelong fight to clean and protect the Hudson. Now he's leading a new effort to bring a floating swimming pool into the waters off Beacon.
It'll go up and down with the tide and stay the same depth.
Each spring at shad bakes like this one, sponsored by the Hudson River Foundation, you'll find the disciples of Pete Seeger, new stewards of the Hudson, celebrating the recreational river, the history, and the diversity of life beneath the surface.
The river has shown amazing resilience, and because of the enormous efforts that so many organizations have made to bring people back in touch with the river, so it's no longer the great sewer, but actually a source of beauty, of recreation, and I think people understand of connection with the natural world.
Up next, the future of the mighty Hudson. Stay with us.
You're watching Reporters Beat, the Mighty Hudson, with Lynda Baquero.
Welcome back. Once undesirable riverfront property is now a hot commodity because the Hudson is cleaner and healthier. But this real estate boom brings new concerns about overcrowding and environmentally sound development. And new battle lines are forming along the Hudson. On the riverfront at Ossining, the old fish shack that stood since the 1920s was removed last month to make way for new condominiums and a retail complex. Factories are not being built on the Hudson anymore. It's luxury homes that are under construction these days.
People have recognized that a room with a view is worth $1 million.
From Manhattan to Kingston, residential construction projects are going up as fast as local planning boards can approve them.
I think what's happening is appropriate in most ways, but there are issues with development along a great river like the Hudson. And what we need to do is to find ways to encourage investment, preserve public access, and create opportunities for development as well as preservation.
But with that comes new concerns: increased traffic, overcrowding, and the need for more environmentally conscious development.
I'm worried about that, Lynda, to be perfectly honest. You know, it's wonderful when a community reclaims its waterfront and you have great parks or recreational facilities such as where we are now, but it also creates enormous pressure for development.
In some large parts of the Hudson Valley, you're seeing huge development that in some cases will have a profound impact on water quality. The Hudson is big enough for everybody. It's big enough for tanker trucks and tugboats and, you know, transportation and tourism and fishing, but we all have to make sure that the different uses don't collide with each other and don't diminish the value of the river to other people.
Some are worried that as the Hudson improves, the general population will have less access to the best spots on the river.
Some of the lower beaches have been taken over by the towns. There's chain link fences and people, you know, asking for admission, and that's the sad part about the river. If something isn't done about that, we have a real problem, because the general public is not going to be able to use the river except exclusively for the local towns.
At 87 years old, Pete Seeger is a fixture on the Beacon riverfront. Pleased that it's clean enough to swim here now, but ever vigilant of what it was like not too long ago.
If we get them down here, they're going to get personally involved in keeping this water clean. Not we're going to let it get dirty again.
Well, we hope you've learned a little bit about what makes the Hudson so special to so many people and the role it's played in New York's history. I know I've learned a lot. I hope you enjoyed it as well. For lots more information on the Mighty Hudson, you can check our website, WNBC.com. On behalf of all of us here at WNBC, I'm Lynda Baquero. Thanks for watching.
Sailing up my dirty stream, still I love it, and I'll keep the dream that someday, though maybe not this year, my Hudson River will once again run clear. I haven't sung this for years. At my age, I don't have a voice left.